When Chanty entered the room, she saw her father sitting in a wheelchair, still wearing his black leather jacket from before he left the house. Her father was next to the large bed in the middle of the spacious room. Chanty couldn't stop herself from rushing over to her father, immediately grasping his hands with concern in her eyes and voice. "Dad, what happened to you? Why are you sitting in this wheelchair? Why?" She glanced at Yaya Maria, her eyes filled with questions. Her father looked at her seriously, squeezing her hand lovingly. Chanty knelt in front of her father, waiting anxiously for an explanation. She needed answers because she was confused and extremely worried about her father. He was the only important person left in her life, her treasure. Meanwhile, Yaya Maria's face showed concern, almost as if she wanted to cry. This added to Chanty's unease. She knew Yaya Maria well, and could tell what emotions she was experiencing based on the circumstances, and right now, Yaya Maria's aura wasn't good. "Chanty, I want to tell you to forgive what's happening now because of my negligence. I fell off the horse, child. I didn't expect Bruno to act up when we passed by the neighbor's newly bought horses." Chanty's father referred to his black horse, Bruno, whom he used in the vineyard when inspecting the whole plantation. "So, I hurt my hip and I can't stand. Luckily, Arnold was with me and helped me get home immediately." Chanty's father explained everything, looking at her intently. His gaze tried to convince her that he only wanted her to believe him right away and not worry anymore. Suddenly, Chanty bowed her head and took a deep breath. "Dad, didn't I tell you not to ride the horse because I once saw you riding too fast?" Chanty said, her voice full of worry. "See what happened now? You need to go to the hospital to get whatever's hurting you treated immediately." Chanty expressed her concern. Chanty immediately looked at Yaya Maria, who was standing at the foot of the bed, her face showing worry as she watched the father and daughter. "Yaya, get Dad's things ready. Let's go to the hospital," Chanty said, still holding her father's hand. "Chanty, I don't want to go to the hospital. I've already called a physician who will come to see me. Don't worry, Dr. Greg is a good doctor," her father said, trying to convince her with his voice. "Is that so? Well, if that's the case, Dad, but there's no medical equipment here at home. We need that to fully assess whether you've broken something or not," Chanty said, trying to persuade her father that it's still better to go to the hospital. "Child, don't worry. I'll go if necessary," Don Lorenzo reassured his daughter. He wanted to alleviate any worry Chanty felt for him. Chanty hesitated for a moment, torn between trusting her father's decision and her concern for his well-being. She looked into his eyes, searching for reassurance, but the worry in her heart lingered. Finally, she nodded reluctantly releasing her father's hand.
"Okay, Papa.
But please promise me you'll go to the hospital if Dr. Greg recommends it," she pleaded softly. Her father nodded solemnly, understanding the gravity of the situation. "I promise, my dear. I'll do what's best for my health," he assured her, his voice filled with sincerity. Chanty sighed with a mixture of relief and apprehension, knowing that her father's health was now in the hands of fate and the visiting physician. She stood up, feeling a weight lifted off her shoulders, yet still anxious about what the future held. Don Lorenzo's face suddenly turned serious as he looked at Chanty. "Child, did you see our guests outside the living room?" the father asked. Chanty looked at her father seriously, waiting for what he would say next. She sat beside the bed, next to her father's wheelchair. Chanty nodded, her gaze fixed on her father, waiting for more information. Don Lorenzo turned to Yaya Maria. "Yaya, could you tell Mrs. Lorna that if she's done preparing, she should serve the meal so our guests outside can eat? My child and I need to have a brief discussion." Don Lorenzo referred to their cook, Mrs. Lorna. Yaya Maria quickly responded and headed out the door. Don Lorenzo waited for the door to close before speaking. "Child, our guests are siblings. Chanty, listen carefully. If there are people you can trust besides me, it's only them. The three of them are the ones I trust in this world besides you, your mother and Yaya Maria. Shanta's father was serious as he spoke, also observing her reaction closely. Shanta didn't respond, her face giving no indication of the emotions she felt about her father's words. Because even though she heard them, she still didn't know them. May I know where they came from and what they're doing here? Shanty asked, equally serious, knowing her father picked up on her question and what else she wanted to know. Shanta, they came from another country and visited here because it's the right time for us to discuss what we need to do when you turn 18. Do you know how our vineyards are managed? Their family's plantation is more extensive and they lead and run it, trusted by their parents. Don Lorenzo said, looking into Shanta's eyes. They have broader knowledge and experience even though they are young. David, Justin, and Marco are all smart young men, respectful, and they won't neglect you in managing our plantation. Don Lorenzo held Shanta's hand firmly. Child, don't be shy or hesitant with them. Our family has known theirs for a long time. Although you've just met them, they see you the same way. Just remember, you can trust them besides me and Yaya Maria. Shanta's father urged, his gaze fixed on her, trying to convince her. Shanta simply nodded in agreement with her father's words. Although she wanted to ask more questions, she thought there would be plenty of opportunities for that later. She thought about the guests outside. They needed to go out to face them. Papa, we need to go out. They're waiting for us. Can you go out? I'll push your wheelchair. Shanta stood up and took hold of the wheelchair handle, gently pushing it towards the door. Shanta noticed her cowboy hat was on her father's lap. She picked it up with a smile. Sorry, I left my cowboy hat here. She hung it on the hook beside the door. The three young men sitting in the living room stood up immediately, smiling as they saw the father and daughter coming out. Their demeanor and expressions showed their gentleness and respect. Don Lorenzo raised his right hand as a sign that it was okay for them to sit, no need to stand. Shanty wheeled her father's chair close to where the three handsome young men were seated. Though Shanty felt embarrassed about her initial hesitation in speaking to the three young men, she didn't hesitate to extend her right hand to each of them with a smile on her lips, looking directly into their eyes. Please forgive my earlier behavior. I'm pleased to meet you, gentlemen. Shanty greeted them with respect, shaking hands with Justin, David, and Marco one by one. The three young men responded with smiles and nods. No problem, Miss Shanty. We're also pleased to meet you and to see you, Don Lorenzo. David said, looking at Don Lorenzo as he spoke. Don Lorenzo smiled and nodded in response. The three young men then returned their gaze to Shanta. She felt awkward under their gaze, feeling like a book they were trying to read. She felt like melting under their intense stares. Although she was used to being looked at deeply by people she met, especially newcomers, their gazes felt different now that they were closer and conversing. Shanty reciprocated their gaze with her own, as if they were books in front of her that she wanted to understand. The actions of the three young men in front of her felt mysterious. She felt like every move they made was perfect, calculated in every gesture and word. Don Lorenzo also sensed the atmosphere in the house and their encounter, serious as he looked at the three young men, their gazes meeting from time to time. Shanta looked for Mang Arnold, whom she had left standing by the door earlier. Mang Arnold was nowhere to be seen. She saw the household helpers busy with various tasks. Yaya Maria was going in and out of the kitchen, while Aling Lorna was setting the table and preparing their dinner. Child, I didn't forget to buy the strawberries you asked for. I got them before going to the vineyard. They're in the refrigerator. Don Lorenzo said with a smile to his daughter. Happiness was evident in Shanta's eyes and lips. Thank you, Papa. I can bake a cake later. Shanta said happily. Child, later, take them around our house. Show them around. They can also ride horses. Let them use our horse. Don Lorenzo said eagerly, looking at the three young men, who were smiling and seemed excited about Don Lorenzo's suggestion. "We're delighted to see your whole household, Don Lorenzo," David said respectfully. David's two siblings smiled at his words. Chanty smiled and simply nodded in agreement with her father's words. She remembered her father's advice not to hesitate with them and to trust them. Whatever her father said was what Chanty trusted without doubt. As they sat down for dinner, the atmosphere was warm and congenial. Chanty observed her father engaged in lively conversation with their guests, discussing various topics from the weather to the latest news in town. She couldn't help but admire how effortlessly they all seemed to get along, as if they had known each other for years. Throughout the meal, Chanty noticed how the three young men interacted with her father with genuine respect and interest. They listened attentively to his stories and shared their own experiences, creating an atmosphere of camaraderie and mutual respect.
After dinner, Dr. Greg arrived shortly to check on Don Lorenzo. He's their new family doctor, replacing Dr. Luis, who passed away along with his mother in an accident. Don Lorenzo preferred staying downstairs in the guest room instead of the second floor to avoid climbing stairs, and Yaya Maria promptly attended to his needs. Meanwhile, Chanty briefly talked with Dr. Greg, who understood her concerns about her father. Dr. Greg nodded in response to Chanty's requests for her father's well-being. Chanty then invited the three brothers to take a walk in the spacious garden outside. They gladly accepted, engaging in friendly conversation ranging from lighthearted to serious, especially about family and business matters. Chanty thought the brothers seemed older than their actual age, given their depth of thought and knowledge. David spoke like a professor, Marco was cheerful and playful, while Justin had a soft yet authoritative voice, always honest even if it meant teasing his siblings, to which David occasionally apologized, and Chanty just smiled, finding their banter amusing. The brothers admired Chanty's expansive garden, her pride and joy. In the middle was a gazebo and a large swimming pool, although Chanty preferred swimming in the nearby river for its fresh water. They sat together inside the gazebo, and Chanty wondered if it was the right time to ask the questions brewing in her mind about the arrival of the three brothers. Chanty took a deep breath, breaking the comfortable silence that had settled among them in the gazebo. "So, guys, I've been meaning to ask, what brings you all here?" Justin leaned back, his gaze wandering over the garden. "Well, Chanty, we heard about your father's vineyard, and we wanted to come and see for ourselves." David nodded in agreement. Marco chimed in, a smile playing on his lips. Chanty's eyes softened with gratitude. "Our family also has a vacation house in the neighboring town nearby," David said enthusiastically. "Please don't take this the wrong way, but how old are you guys? Because your actions and words don't seem to match your age. I know you come from a prestigious family and were raised well, but there's something different about your gestures and speech." Chanty smiled at what she was saying, not expecting those words to come out of her mouth. She also voiced her thoughts. "Please forgive me for my words. You don't have to respond if you're uncomfortable." The three brothers exchanged glances, David smiling despite his serious eyes, as did his two siblings. "We're used to being corrected like that, Miss Chanty, and for us, it's a form of praise." "Thank you, and we appreciate your observation," David continued, gesturing as he spoke. "Oh, by the way, I'm 29, Justin is 27, and Marco is 28, he added with sincerity in his voice. "We're almost 30, Chanty," Marco said with a smile. "And you, Chanty, do you know that you don't look like a beautiful 17-year-old when you speak and act?" Justin teased, but Chanty knew he was right because she often heard the same from others. She matured in her thinking and actions, perhaps due to her upbringing and how her father taught her many things at a young age. Chanty smiled at Justin's comment, and their conversation turned into laughter. Suddenly, David stood up and walked out of the gazebo, surprising his siblings and Chanty. They followed him to see where he was looking. He gazed at the sky as if trying to make out something. Why, David? What's up there? Chanty asked, confused by David's behavior. The three siblings stared at each other, their faces serious. The laughter they had just shared disappeared, replaced by intense gazes. Chanty soon noticed a bird flying closer and closer to their location. Is that an eagle? Chanty exclaimed, recognizing it. It circled above the mansion, and the eagle's cries echoed in the sky in front of their house, until it moved to their exact location. They watched its every move, serious expressions on the brothers' faces, while Chanty was filled with admiration, seeing an eagle up close for the first time. Its wings were beautiful to behold, and it seemed powerful as it flew and cried out. Chanty saw people coming out of the house, amazed by the eagle flying so close to them. Why do you think it's here? Chanty asked, questioning herself and her companions because she knew there was no answer to her question. Who would know why an eagle approached a home unless it wanted to catch prey? But Chanty thought there were no chickens or ducks around them. Chanty noticed the serious faces of the three brothers, staring at her as if communicating with their eyes. Based on David's expression, Chanty wondered why their reaction was like that. Were they angry? At whom? The bird? The three brothers stared at Chanty, wanting to say something but unable to find the words. Chanty knew something was wrong with what was happening. She didn't know what to think. Could you guys speak up? Is this the first time you've seen an eagle too? Isn't it beautiful? It's a different feeling seeing them up close, right? Chanty said, her voice full of admiration and her eyes gleaming.